This is the Hofstra Radio Alumni Audio Yearbook, Volume 2, and today is August 26, 2024. Please tell us your name and the years you were at Hofstra Radio.
Hey, it's Danielle DeLillo, and I was a part of Hofstra Radio from 1997 to 2001.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for coming back to talk with us and share your stories. I'm excited to hear what you got up to in your upperclassmen years. If you could remind the audience, what positions or titles did you hold at the station?
I started out as the traffic director, and then it went into personnel director, training director, and then as a junior, I was on the EB, and I was the community relations director.
So let's go back and start at the beginning. So personnel, how did you get involved in that position?
It's funny you ask because I really didn't want to do personnel because it was just so, let's face it, annoying because I was overseeing the schedule and trying to get people to cover during the summer or during winter break. I just didn't want to deal with that, being like a 19, 20-year-old student. But I spoke with Bruce, and Bruce said, Danielle, you have a personality. People love you. People gravitate towards you. I don't think you're going to have a problem when you ask people to do something for you. I was like, okay. So I wound up applying for that and the training director position. I held both positions at the same exact time. And so it kind of went hand in hand where I was training the students and the community volunteers. And then after they quote unquote graduate or pass the training class, I would put them into their slots after they were, after they did their demo tapes and after they had their tracking done. So it was great. And then I got to know everyone on the staff, which now I look back and I'm like, I have all these friends from all these years because of this role I had at WRHU. And it was great. I didn't mind it at all after the initial like, wah, 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 you know. So I at the end of it, I loved it. And I was actually sad to end the position, but excited for the next role that I got. So,
okay. So for those of us who weren't at the station when there was a personnel director, it sounds like some of those responsibilities were things that used to go to, let's say, the program director or the executive engineer to make sure that someone was always there. Was that position taking some of that responsibility, or were you working in concert with people on the EB?
I was constantly working with people on the EB, and it was really, going back, and this was, 1998, 1999, there were a lot less students, a lot less community volunteers than there are now. And it really was a role that enabled me to learn about management skills and being quote unquote a boss. And I really enjoyed being a part of the team and just focusing on building relationships and bringing everyone together. And whether it was the homecoming day parade or if it was when we were doing our radiothons and marathons, I was really instrumental in getting the staff to be a part of those events. So I did work with the EB and Bruce more closely on that. So it was really, honestly, I look back at that time and like people looked at me and they looked to me like, oh, can you help me get coverage on this? Or, I was updating the phone lists, making sure I had the correct phone numbers for everybody. And we didn't really use email back then a lot, but we were starting to. And then we switched from analog to digital around that time as well. So it was helping the staff get used to the changes as well. And I worked very closely with Sean Novat on that stuff. So.
That's great stuff. Was there ever a point where Bruce turned to you and said, "I was right, wasn't I?" Or did you come around and say, "I see why you picked me for the personnel job," and it worked out?
Yeah, I remember sitting in his office and we were just chatting because he was like my dad on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, "You see, Double D, I told you you're going to do a great job." And I'm always the one that's like, "Nah, no, you're the one who did a great job." And he just said, "Danielle, you need to realize your strengths. And when someone believes in you, you need to believe in yourself as well." And that always stuck in my head because a lot of the times I have self-doubt, or I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm failing. But I realized the failures that I've made in my career really propelled me to where I am today. So looking back on being on the AB and the EB, and I made some mistakes and I learned from them, and I do not do the same things that I did back 20 years ago today. Thank God.
For all of us, I think, right? I think Bruce always made it a point in conversations with me to say, this isn't just about radio or how you sound on the air or learning a technical skill. It's about the whole person and growing and challenging yourself and becoming, a responsible citizen and part of a team, and understanding that. And it sounds like he was definitely guiding you in that way.
He was a very good mentor to have, and he also became a friend. In the beginning, we butt heads, and I think it's because we were both Geminis. and my birthday and his birthday were only a couple days apart, but a lot of years in between. But we really became super, super close, and he really helped me in school, in my personal life, trying to help me get jobs and internships, and he coached me. And I'll never forget what Bruce did for me and guided me in college and then afterwards. And I look back and think about the times where I spent in his office upset or crying or angry or happy. And he always assured me, like, let's look at it this way. You'll be okay. Just think of it this way. Or let's look at this. Let's turn this around, or let's just figure this out. And he really was instrumental in my growth, not only as a student, but as an adult and as a career woman.
Thank you for sharing that. That's such a great personal memory of Bruce, and I love hearing stories like that. So thank you so much. So after personnel director, I think you said you moved up to, was it a community volunteer coordinator, or did I get that right?
No, it's the community relations director.
Sorry. And what was that job?
It was basically trying to maintain relationships in the community as well as on campus, and just getting the radio station out and about, kind of like marketing and promotions and publicity for the station. And I basically saw an increase of listenership and students wanting to know more about WRHU, being at the admitted students days or open houses. I remember getting an email from Gina Krantz, who was one of the dean of students back in the day. And she told Bruce, "I've never saw so much engagement with families and the radio stations." We set up during the summer, we would basically DJ the orientation barbecues back at Hofstra USA. And we would work together with the orientation leaders, the Office of Orientation, and WRHU. We would every week be there on Thursday evenings, and it was awesome just getting the radio station's name and frequency out there. And at that time, we were starting to do wrhu.org, where people can stream the station. So that was another piece of my job, just trying to promote the website and getting people to listen over the stream.
And it's such an effective way of getting more people not only to listen to the station, but to get involved and to be interested in it. And it was great to see that the university was taking such an active role in getting the radio station out there to new students and prospective students. That's a great change in the relationship between the station and the university. And I'm really glad you were part of that, because it sounds like it was really a time of exciting opportunity and growth.
Yeah, and working with Herman Berliner, he was also instrumental in promoting the radio station on campus, and it was great to be able to work with the executives at the university and also our group, just being able to get that radio station more exposure.
So that was the position you had during your junior year, is that right?
Yes.
Did you have a position as a senior?
Well, it was junior into senior, so it was spring semester, fall semester, senior year. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that would have been about the time that it switched from being the positions were the academic year calendar to the regular year calendar. So the positions were January to December.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you for talking about that. It's great to see the way that the station changed and grew from personal stories like that. Now, I'm sure you have a million stories about your time at Hofstra Radio, and you've already shared some great stuff about Bruce. But when you talk about Hofstra Radio, is there one story that you always tell about your time at the station?
There are several. I mean, there are so many memories that were made at that radio station. I mean, a couple stand out to me. One in particular was myself and Mike Corbett went to Bloomberg's headquarters and covered the election on election night, and being a part of such a historical evening and being there. And Mike Corbett, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he's very, very, very involved in the Democratic committee. And so being there with him, and he was so passionate about it. And I'm not really passionate about politics. I really, really never was. But being there with him, I was so excited because he's amazing and he knows so much about politics. And I actually learned a lot that evening. Just being there and celebrating Mayor Bloomberg's win, and just being a part of that room. And I would love to listen back to that broadcast. It was, and we actually won awards that year for that broadcast. We won a Long Island Press Award, I believe, for election night coverage. So it was a very historical night for me. Someone who didn't really care about politics and learned a whole bunch that night from not only the room, but Mike Corbett, who's extremely involved still to this day. And so it was really great to be a part of that. And, history was made in New York City that night, and I was so happy to be there.
Yeah, that must have been exciting to be part of the news coverage, but also there was, I'm sure, an exciting energy to the room that, most people when they're 19 or 20 years old don't get a chance to be part of.
Right. Exactly. And being a Hofstra student and being a part of WRHU gave me that opportunity to do something that I never thought I was ever going to do. So it was great.
That's a great story. Very cool. So what are the other big stories that come to mind?
Well, I remember, and this is a true radio scenario, like real life, true stuff in the big leagues. I we used to have to power down the station. I don't know if you remember, we would be off from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Uh-huh.
And so no one came in to power down the station. So the 1 to 3 shift, the airwave shift, no one showed up. So I was on the air before then. So I wound up being on the air until 3 a.m. I slept under the console and powered the station on at 5 a.m. I mean, it was a true radio scenario. And people at where I work at iHeartRadio, they do the same thing. We'll have someone doing overnights, and then say the show in the morning show is being tracked, or it's like a best of show, they all sleep in the studio. So it's wild.
Yeah, there were certainly a few people who slept either in the office or the music office, or maybe in a production studio, and then turned around and got back on. But that's yeah, you earned your stripes there. That's dedication.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that's for sure.
Wow. That's great stuff. So there are stories that you always think of. Is there a story about Hofstra Radio that you haven't had a chance to tell, or haven't thought of in a little while?
Well, I remember a funny moment.
Sure.
It was Christmas time, and we were playing Jingle Bells, and it was the Jazz Cafe, and I accidentally back announced the song, and I said, "You just heard Jingle Balls," and Joel Meyer came out flailing his arms like, "What are you doing? What did you just say?" I'm like, "Oh my God, did I just say Jingle Balls?" It was so funny. I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that on the radio."
So, what was that? Was that ever addressed in a more in a meeting, or was it just sort of, let's forget this ever happened and not discuss it?
He pulled me aside after and he said, "Danielle, why did you say Jingle Balls?" I said, "I don't know. It just came out of my mouth." He's like, "You have to be careful." I'm like, "I know, but that never happened to me ever. I've never cursed on the radio. I never said anything inappropriate. That was the first time that I ever said something inappropriate." And I laugh to this day. And, Dave Plotkin, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but
Sure.
he always brings that up to me. He goes, "Do you remember when you said Jingle Balls?" Yes, I remember. I said Jingle Balls. So that to me was a funny moment. I guess you had to be there, kind of thing, but it was funny.
That's great, and that's true friendship. That a friend won't let you forget that one time,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll bring it up again and again and again. Oh gosh,
Yep.
that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have I wouldn't probably put that at the top of the categories of things that you remember, but is there a proudest moment, or is there a biggest accomplishment of your time at the station that you always look back on fondly?
That is a great question, Brian. I think the proudest moment that I ever had was, I think, when we did do an interview with President Shewart. And President Shewart was someone who I knew of for a very long time because I was a young child. When I was a young child, I performed at the Cranford John Adams Cranford Playhouse?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
As a dancer when I was in dancing school. And I told my parents, I was like 5 or 6 years old, I said, "I'm going to go to school here one day." And my mother's like, "Yeah, right. Yeah, okay." Like, you don't even know what you want for breakfast. You're going to go to college here, And I remember just hearing Mary Beth Carey from Hofstra University on commercials and learning about the university and President Shewart and what he did for the university all those years, and being able to sit down with him and tell him the memories that I had as a young child, and being able to be on campus and fulfilling my dreams of being a Hofstra student. He was very touched by that. And I remember sitting with him and talking to him about Mary Beth Carey and how
Mhm.
you would hear her commercial over and over and over again, to meeting the man who came to Sewanaka High School to talk to me about Hofstra and telling me, your grades aren't that great, but we'll definitely try. And I struggled a lot in school. I had some issues, but I knew what I was passionate about, and broadcast was a passion of mine. And being able to sit there and tell President Stewart that I have been wanting to come to Hofstra since I was 5, and I was 20 years old at that time speaking to him, and his face just lit up. And it was such an accomplishment for me to speak to the man who ran the university all these years. And he was on his way out, he was retiring, and I was working with President Rabinowitz, who was the dean of the law school at the time. And we didn't know at that moment that President Rabinowitz was going to be the president.
Mm.
But just being able to sit down with President Stewart and talk to him about my passion for the university and the school, it really, I look back, and that moment to me was such a huge accomplishment of mine. And being a student, being able to sit down with the president of a university alone, I don't think many students have that opportunity. So being able to do that was an accomplishment.
Hmm. Wow, wow, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about that. That's amazing. So much of what we talk about in these conversations is the shows or programs or accomplishments that we did on air or things, but so much of what I'm hearing from you is about the personal relationships that come with Hofstra Radio, and not necessarily that you knew President Stewart well, but you had this opportunity to have this conversation, and the conversations with Bruce and with Joel, and all these friendships that you've maintained over the years since then. It sounds like so much of what you took from the station is not necessarily the radio stuff, although certainly, with your remarkable career, that's part of it. But so much of what you took from it is those personal relationships and how to connect with people. Does that seem fair?
Very fair. I utilized my relationship skills to its fullest.
Mm.
And I use it to this day. Many people call me the Queen Schmoozer. I really know how to talk to people and make people feel comfortable, and I can sell water to a whale if I needed to. But I learned all of that from, my grandfather and my father were very personable people, and I learned a lot of that from them. And then also being at Hofstra, working with Bruce and working with the admissions office and working hand in hand with the dean's office. So I was able to utilize my relationship and building relationships per se, and just being out there and being me. And I always say, what you see is what you get. I'm 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, the nicest, sweetest person. I'm outgoing. I love to live. I love to help. So, the slightest thing, the slightest task, the littlest door, you open the door for somebody, it could make their day. Oh, thank you. So I learned all of that in college and working at WRHU.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. That's great. The this is another question that I'm sure could go in another 10 different directions, but I like to ask: is there, when you think of your time at the radio station, is there a song that you played or heard, or is there an event or a game? Is there something that sort of defines your time at the station?
I don't think one thing. I think
Mm.
it's a culmination of all 4 years. Um, I started out as a freshman. I walked onto that campus, met Sean Novat, and put in my application. And when I got the call that they wanted to bring me in for an interview, I was over the moon excited. And I said, instead of joining a sorority, I'm going to join the radio station. And instead of being in another club, I'm going to stick with the radio station and stay focused on that because this is what I want to do with my life. And being a part of the training class and passing and getting on the air, and then Bruce said to me, we need a traffic director. And I know you just got out of the training class, but would you be interested in applying for it? And I said, sure, why not? You know what? Forget about it. I'll do it. And that's when I started to see that I had something special and that the radio station was something special. And I grew as a person, as an individual, as a woman, and as a broadcaster. And I also grew up at that radio station. It really helped me become the woman I am today. And I mean that wholeheartedly. And yeah, you know what? I went on the radio after that at WLIR. I worked for the New York Dragons as a fire dancer. I worked in all facets of entertainment, whether it's modeling, acting, etc., on the air. I learned a lot from being a part of WRHU. And the staff like Ed, Michelle Lisi, Bruce, as I mentioned, and Joel just really was, they were instrumental in my life. And I look back and I don't think there's one thing that defined me. I think WRHU helped define me as a woman, as a student, as a hard worker. I think everything that I went through during those 4 years just made me who I am. And then I look back at what I did at the radio station and the people I met, the relationships that I built. And I'm so grateful because now, being out of college for however many years, I'm not going to tell you, but you can do the math. Just being out of school for so long and really keeping those relationships. For an example, Keith Irizarry and I are still close friends. Vinny McCucci, Ralph Bednarchik, Mike Corbett, Regina Greenberg, who her and I have been thick as thieves since 1997. I mean, we're still best friends. Just having those relationships and helping me in my career, that's what defined me. Not just one thing. It was everything.
Wow. I'm sure I know the answer to this question, but I like to ask it anyway. Was there ever a time or a moment where you thought, I don't need the station, or I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to try something else? Was there ever a thought that you might leave?
So there was a time where I was living with the sorority Alpha Phi. And they're like, you should pledge, blah, blah, blah. And I did round robin, and a bunch of different sororities came by and they wanted me to pledge. And I sat down with Michelle Lisi and she said, you're not going to have time for us. This is what you want to do. This is your life. This is your future. She's like, yeah, you can make friends. You can have a whole squad behind you, but you have us and you're so good at making friends. I'm not worried about you. Mm-hmm. And so I sat down and I said, you know what? You're right. This is my future. And if I put this to the side, I might screw myself. So I wound up not pledging, and those girls were kind of like upset about it, but they got over it. I mean, now they're still friends of mine, and they're so proud of me for doing what I wanted to do and followed my heart. So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you to Michelle for giving you a good pep talk and
Mhm.
keeping you at the station. That's great.
Mhm.
What do you miss most about your time at the station?
I miss being 20 years old. 20 years old. I miss being 20, 21 years old, being on campus and just having not a worry in the world except powering down the station and powering it up and sleeping under the console. I think I miss the camaraderie that we had, the family that we were. I miss Bruce and Ed immensely.
Mm,
I think about the years that I spent there, and I wish I did more. Even though I did a lot, I wish I did more. I really
mm,
do. I wish I did more. I wish that for major events like 9/11 that I didn't listen to my mom and left my house and went to the radio station to help do the broadcast. But what I did do was Mike Corbett lived on 34th Street on the east side, and he had a view of the towers. And
mm.
we were on AOL Instant Messenger, and he was like, "Can you get someone to get in touch with me? Because I can call in and I can do this." So I got them all in touch, and then they had Mike on. So I feel like, you know what, a part of me was helpful in that day, considering I had just graduated in May. I did not have a job. I was just home, and I wish that I was at the radio station. That's one thing that I regret not being at the station for 9/11.
Yeah.
I could have went, but I didn't. I was waiting for my mom to come home from the city. She was on the last train out from Penn Station,
Mm.
and I really wish that I went to the radio station, but I was helpful in that Mike Corbett got on the air and did live reports. So I'm thankful that I helped in that situation. But that's one thing, like I said, that I regret not being able to be a part of in the studio.
That's a tough spot to be in because obviously you're waiting to hear and to see your mom, and you've got that responsibility. But you also connected Mike, and I've had at least half a dozen people in these interviews say that they remember Mike's reports from that day and how important that was, and how the station activated as a team. And I've asked this of any number of people, and maybe I don't really have a set question, but hopefully you can make sense of what I'm trying to say here. There's something about the people that come to Hofstra Radio that when there's an event like this, everyone runs to the station, or they're, what can I do? How can I help? And I wonder, is it something intrinsic in the people that come to the station, or is it something about the station that makes people say, oh, something's going on, I better go to the station and help out?
I think that's it. I think it's, what can I do to help? What WRHU is such a huge family, and even when I'm at campus, I teach part time as an adjunct professor in the public relations department, and I see them do the same things that we did, hanging out in the hallway, having meetings. They're in the office, they're all talking about Newsline or what can they do to help, just the top stories for that day and how they're going to talk about it on the radio. And I think the station, I think the upper management, I think the students, they all come together and they're like, what can I do to help? What can I do to help bring um, attention to this one thing, or help
Mm.
help with this story. And I think the radio station as a whole gives us that opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I raised my hand to help, or let me write this story out for you. Let me help you edit. So I think the training class really helps bring that to life.
Yeah, it's something about the community that draws in those kinds of people, and then we all help and support each other. The older students help the younger students, and the community helps each other out. So, yeah, thank you for taking a swing at that. It's something that I think about quite a bit, because there are special people that are drawn to the station, and it's nice to see that play out in different ways. Now here's a hypothetical. And it's
Okay.
probably not that hypothetical, but let's say the automation is down and John Mullen calls you and says, listen, we need someone to fill in for 2 hours on the air this afternoon. Technology aside, would you be willing to go in and do a shift at the radio station?
150%. Without a doubt. I'd be on my way right now.
Nice.
Yep.
So in this hypothetical scenario, format is no object. What kind of show would you do?
Well, I love the 90s and 2000s music. So I'd probably do like throwbacks to 90s and 2000s, because that music was amazing. It really was. So I would probably do throwbacks the entire 2 hours.
That sounds like a lot of fun. No Christmas music, though.
No jingle balls. No jingle ball swinging, I'll tell you that much.
I can picture Joel Myers somewhere just sort of having a panic attack, saying, "What's happening? I don't know why."
Yeah.
If you could time travel for 60 seconds and go back and meet your 18-year-old self, what kind of advice would you give yourself?
Stop doubting yourself. Stop doubting yourself, because doubt and fear got in the way of a lot of different things, and I wish that never got in my way. I might be in a different spot right now. I was supposed to move to Florida. I was supposed to move to California. Never did. My life probably would be totally different, but fear got in the way. And so here I am. So I think my 18-year-old self would need to hear, don't give up, stop letting fear get in the way, and just do it.
That's great advice for anybody. I think we all need to take that advice every once in a while and overcome the obstacles that we often put in front of ourselves. So great advice. I love to hear that. You obviously have had a very successful career after Hofstra Radio. I'm wondering if there are particular lessons or skills. You mentioned some of this before, especially in your conversations with Bruce, but what are the things that you took from Hofstra Radio that apply to your career and adult life?
Don't say jingle balls. Don't let anything stand in your way. If you want something, you got to get it. And that's something that I was taught early on. I think the community relations director position, I actually wanted to become station manager, but I didn't get it, and I'm happy that I didn't, because I am more of the community relations person. Currently at my job, I handle all of our public service announcements and public service stuff. So that kind of helped when I was taking this job. Oh, did you ever work with community? Yeah, that's what I did. So they handed me the public service stuff. But I think, not giving up, and then not caring what people say about you. I have a hard time still dealing with that. But I try very hard not to let that get in the way.
Mm, and that's something that you can take with you, whatever your job is, whatever your position is. That's something that can apply. So that's great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's great stuff. Danielle, this has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so glad to see you starting to come out of your shell and become more open and so forth. This has been really so much fun, and I really sincerely thank you for taking the time to share your stories.
Brian, it's been a pleasure, and I'm so thankful that you're doing this. It's really awesome. I love listening to everyone's stories and reliving the past, which is always fun. And
Mm.
keep it up. I look forward to hearing more of these. And thank you for preserving the history of WRHU.